In today's video, we have the latest offseason trade talk concerning teams like the Minnesota Wild, Montreal Canadiens, and the New York Rangers. Plus, we have some more chatter and talk around the Ottawa Senators ownership situation. We have another confirmation of a group that might be interested in purchasing should the Melnyk family decide to sell. We also have some updates on the Summers World Junior and Ivan Hlinka tournaments, as well as some injury updates and some playoff confirmations as well. All that coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to talk about here today. First up, a couple quick items. One, Auston Matthews is going to remain out of the Leafs lineup again this evening for the game against the Philadelphia Flyers. Of course, he missed the last game as well with something that Sheldon Keefe kind of described as this something minor. But obviously, the fact that he's missing a second straight game, I think it's fair to say, probably has a few Leaf fans a little bit more concerned than they were before. But he is expected to head out with the team on their upcoming road trip here in a few days. So certainly that's not entirely bad. Whatever it is, it's something that's not overly serious, and they want him to get it looked after and be healed up here before the playoffs start. We know playoff hockey is a whole different animal, and it certainly gets a lot more physical play for sure. And if you're already banged up going into the playoffs, it just certainly increases the odds of something happening that you're going to be uncomfortable or be dealing with more issues is going to impact your play. So they want him 100% if possible going into the playoffs, although there's probably not too many NHL players who can really honestly say they're 100% this time of year. As I mentioned, we have some updates on some upcoming tournaments this summer. Of course, we already knew that this was likely taking place, but we now have confirmation of locations and dates. Hlinka Gretzky Cup, of course, takes place this year in Alberta. It's going to be held in Red Deer on July 31st to August 6th. And the Edmonton Oilers will be hosting the World Juniors again, another attempt to complete that tournament since they had to shut it down early in the going the first time around. That's going to go shortly after the Hlinka Gretzky. That'll go August 9th to the 20th. So certainly a couple of big tournaments there. The original World Juniors was combined between Red Deer and Edmonton. They won't be this year. They'll be just in Edmonton, but of course Red Deer gets the other tournament to kind of make up for it. So certainly some exciting times for our younger NHL prospects to look forward to for the summertime. And of course, we also know now a fair bit about our NHL playoff scenarios. We know the 8 teams in the East, which really isn't a big surprise. We've known really for quite some time who those 8 teams were going to be, but now it's finally official. They're just at the stage where they're jockeying for position. We know that the Panthers, Leafs, Lightning, as well as the Bruins, all from the Atlantic, are going to be in. And we know that the Hurricanes, Rangers, Penguins, and Capitals from the Metro will be in. Right now, Boston and Washington are your wildcard teams, but that is not, a given to stay that way. It is remotely possible. For example, especially in the case of the Bruins, that they could maybe even move up, knock Tampa down or something like that, or even the second and third spots, in each division could change. Carolina, the Rangers, and the Metro are fairly tight as well, so we will see exactly what our matchups are going to be, but at least we know 100% who those teams are. A lot of the spots in the West are clinched as well, but we, of course, don't know them all. And we know that the Vegas Golden Knights were in a good spot to make a come from behind leap and get themselves into the playoffs, but that loss last night against the New Jersey Devils might just be an extra nail in the coffin to kind of stop that from happening. Vancouver now has an opportunity with a game in hand, and of course they play tonight against Ottawa, so we'll see how they do there. They've been on a bit of a winning streak lately, keeping themselves in the mix. Still not, easy by any means to get in. They still have to leap over Vegas, and they still have to, at the same time, hope that either Nashville or Dallas, or in the case of the LA Kings even, possibly falter to be able to jump into one of those spots. So obviously the Canucks are going to be looking for a win tonight and some help elsewhere to make sure that keeps going. In terms of Vegas, though, speaking of injuries and things like that, like Mark Stone, we know recently came back, has been activated from long-term injury reserve, but I think it's fair to say that he's nowhere near 100%. I think he's only playing because of the situation, which is not a huge surprise, but for him to come back and play, back 4 or 5 games, and he doesn't even have a point. And a couple of those games I saw big chunks of the game, and he wasn't even all that noticeable when he's typically one of the top players and top wingers in the game. We know he was suffering from a back injury, and it's pretty apparent to me that he's certainly still dealing with that. His ice time early going when he first came back was, around like, I think 13, 14 minutes, and it's kind of built up. I think the last game he played closer to 20 minutes or right around 20 minutes, but still just not getting it done. So to me, that says that he's nowhere near 100%, and really, if it wasn't for the situation with the playoff spot on the line, I don't think he'd be in the lineup. And even if Vegas does somehow miraculously get in, which at this point after that loss last night is going to be really difficult, I'm not sure that they have the health to be able to keep up and really stand much of a chance in the early going of those playoffs. It would likely be an early exit, at least that's my opinion right now. I know Vegas has never really dealt with any adversity. They've made the playoffs every year, so I'm sure the fan base probably is not happy and not really sure what to do with themselves right now, but looks like the first bit of pain will be coming to the Golden Knights organization when it comes to missing out on the playoffs, or at least that's the way it looks as of today, barring some kind of weird miracle. As I mentioned as well, there's some updates when it comes to Ottawa Senators ownership. Now, of course, we still don't know the long-term plans here for Eugene Melnyk's daughters. Of course, what their plans are going to be, if they're going to retain ownership. Are they going to sell a chunk of it but retain a minority stake? Or are they going to sell it completely? Nobody knows. And it's probably going to be some time before that decision is made. All indications there could be like at least another probably 4 to 6 weeks, probably before, and even then there's no guarantees that there will be any kind of decision made on how they intend to move forward. For right now, they're still, grieving and going through, I'm sure, lots of other things that they need to sort through here in their personal lives. But there was a story today in CTV Ottawa talking about, another potential buyer. Now, of course, the Roger Greenberg, who was the chairman of the Minto Group, which is one of the largest real estate developers in the Ottawa region, was being interviewed because he was speaking at a hospital fundraising function and was flat out asked about this. It's not something he went out to, purposely to speak on publicly, but he was asked the question and answered it, in my opinion, respectfully, if he would be interested, or if his group would be interested in participating in should these Senators become for sale. And his words were that they likely would participate if it became an option for them, if the Senators became for sale. But of course, it was caution right off the bat that he said, first and foremost, the team has to be for sale. And he said, we don't know what the family's intentions are at this point. So to me, there was nothing wrong with the answer at all. And of course, like I said, Roger Greenberg, chairman of the Minto Group, which is a large real estate company. He's a very prominent real estate executive, obviously connected to OSAG, which is as an executive chairman. So he's well connected in that regard. Of course, OSAG owns the 67s, the Ottawa 67s Junior Club, and the Ottawa Red Blacks CFL franchise. And it's been speculated for some time that if this ever came to be, that if the Sens became for sale, even when Melnyk was alive, if he decided to sell, they would likely be in the mix down there. You would think. We don't know the status right now of the LeBreton Flats bid to get a new arena downtown. We know that there was bids submitted. The Senators are believed to be a part of that. If the ownership changed and it ended up becoming a situation where they could get downtown and this group could be a part of the ownership, I would think they'd probably move the Ottawa 67s down there as well. Maybe, I'm not sure if they'd be joint tenants in one new arena or how that would work. That would be my guess. But still, it'd be an interesting scenario to unfold. We know there's multiple groups. These guys are not the only ones that would have interest in a Senators ownership stake. There will be plenty of interest to buy the team and keep them there in Ottawa. And just for something, in case you're not aware, obviously Roger Greenberg was involved in the original Senators ownership stake when they first came back to the NHL in the early 90s. So of course at that point, his company was a lot smaller, and they were only held a minority stake, but they were involved. So certainly, a situation where they're not unfamiliar to this and would be very interested. And like I said, there's other prominent Ottawa people that would be involved too. We've heard a lot of talk about former players, like some prominent alumni, being talked about and being involved in some capacity too. So time will tell. Like I said, first and foremost, Melnyk's family need to decide what they're doing. If, and a big if here, they decide they want to sell and many people have a hard time seeing them retaining full ownership considering where they're at in their lives. But again, this is their decision. There will be no shortage of interest by lots of local prominent, companies that have the deep pockets to make it happen and keep the team in Ottawa and hopefully get them downtown and get this team on the right path to, obviously a bright future in the nation's capital. Now, on to the NHL trade rumors for today. Of course, we want to start here with the Minnesota Wild. There's been a lot of reports lately, some from Michael Russo, looking at their offseason plans that they're likely going to have no choice but to trade either Kevin Fiala or Matt Dumba. And of course, one of these two likely going to have to go due to salary cap constraints due to the Ryan Suter and Zach Parise buyouts that Bill Guerin executed last offseason. This is an important year for Minnesota this year to make the best of their season because they're going to have a tighter cap situation for the next couple of years. Now, many people as early as even probably a month ago or 2-3 months ago thought that the Fiala trade was going to be pretty much a given. There was one point where the Wild and the Senators were scouting each other extensively, a lot, multiple people from each franchise to a lot of the games for each team. And there was a lot of talk that even though something wasn't about to happen now, but it was kind of setting things up for a potential discussion to continue for the offseason, and that Fiala was likely the target. We know the Senators will likely benefit from either a top 4 defenseman or a top 6 forward. They need one of each ideally. And Fiala's young enough and could be a good fit, with their existing young, a young crew that they have as part of their new core. And at this point, though, it's kind of changing the narrative a little bit that many Wild fans and Wild reporters are now saying the way Fiala's played, that there's just no way they can afford to lose this guy. So, at this point, he has 73 points in 75 games. He's been red hot as of late, been a huge part of their surge here heading towards the playoffs. I think Minnesota has a chance to do some damage in the playoffs too, so only time will tell. Fiala's made it known that he's kind of willing to bet on himself here and took a 1-year deal with Minnesota. He's going to be an RFA again this summer, has arbitration rights. There's no way the Senators or any other team would make a trade, I don't think, unless he agreed to a longer-term contract. But I'm not so sure that he's going to be the guy to go. I think they might do everything they can to keep him, and that Dumba might be the more likely scenario to go. I'm not sure if he was a target that Minnesota and Ottawa had discussed, but they could certainly use a top 4 defenseman, and he fits that bill, but there might be some other D out there that might be a better fit. I'm not really sure what their plans are going to be on the blue line in Ottawa. They do have Jake Sanderson joining the team. Shabbat is there. They got Zub, who's going to be hopefully extended and pretty solid stabilizing defenseman there. I don't know if Dumba would be a target or if they'd want to go in another direction because they do have some younger D that could be worked in, but they could probably use another veteran. It's just really hard to predict what Ottawa's going to do. I'm not sure if that would be a fit there or if that Dumba trade ended up going with a completely different team, which is quite possible. But either way, expect Minnesota to really go forward as best they can between now and the playoffs, see what they can do. And in the offseason, they're going to have to trade a prominent name. It's just a given, a matter of who ends up going. It's also been pretty well documented here that PK Subban's time in New Jersey is coming to a close. The team has made it known that he's not going to be re-signed. Of course, he's coming off a $9 million contract. He's scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent. Obviously, his next contract is likely going to have to be a lot shorter term and a lot less money because he has not lived up to that kind of money and that kind of contract in some time. His play has certainly fallen off quite substantially here over the past few years. It's been rumored and speculated that he might make a return even to Canada. I don't know, to some Canadian teams if he's willing to sign cheap enough, but time will tell. We don't really have any kind of rumor right now on where he's going to end up, just that it seems very unlikely that he's going to be making a return to New Jersey. Of course, in Montreal, Carey Price is going to be making his second start of the season here tonight. And of course, the Montreal goaltending situation going into the offseason has been a big hot topic of a debate lately as well. What's the Habs goaltending situation going to look like next year? Is it going to be Price and Allen? Is it going to be Price and Montembeault? Will Caden Primo be at the NHL level, or will he remain in the American Hockey League, still continuing to develop? And a lot of that is really just a bunch of question marks, and we don't know the full answers to that. But certainly, as I said, we've heard before from many NHL insiders wondering if Carey Price getting into some games before the end of the season might be a bit of a way to showcase himself to other teams. But there's also been a lot of talk, a lot of reports I've seen lately suggesting from a various local Habs media saying that, you know what, with the contract that Jake Allen has, short term, not a lot of money, the number of teams looking for goaltending help, that maybe it makes more sense for them to really consider a trade to try to get some future assets here. As much as they like him, and along with Carey Price for their goaltending, they've had a lot of goalies this year due to injuries. Montembeault has certainly proven that he could be a decent backup. Given that this team is still expecting to, continue rebuilding here for the next little while, does it make sense to have two veteran goaltenders? It may not. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen with Carey Price. So to me, they're not likely both going to be traded here. If Carey Price and Montreal worked out a deal that he waived his no move and they somehow figured out a way to trade him, then there's no way that Jake Allen is going to be traded too. But I wouldn't be shocked if one of these two veteran goaltenders find themselves on another team next year. I think obviously Carey Price is going to get way more of the attention given the magnitude of his contract and obviously the success he's had. Been in Montreal a long time, so that's going to be probably the more heavily discussed scenario. But I wouldn't be surprised to see his goalie partner be the one to go instead. We'll see. I have no doubt there'll be lots of interest, and there's bound to be lots of teams that we know just from the deadline and what's expected to be available for free agent goalies. There's going to be a fair bit of teams looking to change things up between the pipes next year. So there will be a ton of interest, and there was a lot of interest in Jake before the deadline too. So there's no doubt Montreal is going to have some options on what they do in that regard. The New York Rangers were reportedly interested in keeping Andrew Kopp beyond the current season. Of course, they gave up a pretty price to pay him, to acquire him, so it certainly makes sense that they would try to keep him. And obviously, they're going to have to pay him a good contract after having a solid season here. He's getting more of an opportunity to play higher in the lineup than he traditionally did in Winnipeg, and he's been making the most of it, but it's going to be tough. The Rangers don't have a lot of cap space for next season. They certainly only have between $11 and $12 million. They also have Ryan Strome as a pending UFA, who right now we're hearing that it sounds like they're interested in bringing him back, but Kopp and Strome alone are going to be, taking up a lot of that money if they do stay. Maybe even it's not enough. And then, of course, you have Capo Caco, you have Sammy Blais, you have Alex Georgiev, and you have Julien Gauthier, all as pending restricted free agents. So you get to sign those guys or replace them. And besides Kopp, they also have Tyler Mott and Frank Vetrano, who they acquired at the deadline as well, also as pending UFA. So it's a lot of players to either sign or replace without limited amount of money, which makes you think that either some of those players are not coming back or another contract is going to have to be moved out to create some space. I think the prime targets there are Georgiev between the pipes. He's been wanting to move anyway so he can have a chance to be a starting goalie. So I think that it's going to be a necessity as well. More likely that they finally honor that request. I'm not sure that the Rangers are going to be able to keep Vetrano or Mott. That might be very, very difficult because of the cap. And on top of that, you have to wonder, will a guy like Caco, who's been having a tough season dealing with injuries, his production not the best through the first 3 years of his entry-level contract, or could we see something more significant? You have to wonder. There's no rumors right now suggesting that they're looking to trade into their young talent, but Caco, Hedl, etc. are not exactly working out for them, and where they need some space, something's got to give. You wonder who's going to go, but somebody has to. We just don't know who as of yet, besides Georgiev being the prime target. Otherwise, there's a possibility that Kopp or Strome, one of the two, don't return, even though there's interest on both sides to do so. So let me know your thoughts on everything discussed here today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.